morning in Australia, in Perth. Good afternoon in Israel. This is TMS Roundtable. My name is Dr. Tovah Goldfine, and everyone knows how excited I am when we go live and there's no kinks. And then I'm grateful to the internet gods because we are a bit dependent on the internet, and grateful for this opportunity to be in a virtual studio and go live each week and bring healing. So tonight I am extra excited to be in Australia with Dr. Talia Steed. I really just met you through somebody gave me your name, and just the way things happen, kismet or serendipity, the way things happen. We were supposed to meet, and I am thrilled and honored to meet you. So Dr. Talia is going to speak about herself. I'm going to let her do the talking. So I would love you to start with your name and where you're from and your education as a doctor, and how you evolved and how this thing evolved, that you became an alternative medical doctor, and how privileged we all are to be hearing from you tonight and today. So shalom and welcome.
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Dr. Talia. I went through, regular medical school in Australia, in Perth. And even from those early days, I felt that something didn't quite fit for me, the way we were taught and the very medical approach. And I would gravitate to, the elective units like psychology of healing and this kind of thing. And the whole time I was feeling like, oh, I don't want to do medicine. And I would say to my mum, this isn't for me. But I kind of kept pushing through because that's what you do. And then I went through my intern year and psychiatry training, and none of that ever felt right. And I even left medicine for some time after that because that just still wasn't feeling like the right fit. So there was kind of like this medical side going along, and then my yoga side, the spiritual side. And with what I was seeing in both sides, I just didn't feel like the medical was truly looking at healing. So I've kind of gone on this winding journey backwards and forwards with medicine. It's almost been like an on again, off again relationship. Or
the meeting of the body and the mind.
Yeah, well, kind of. I feel like with medicine, the element that's lacking is the soul.
100%.
100%. So last year I was still in my GP training after this winding path, and I finally made the decision that it still wasn't feeling right, and I could not practice in this way. And that's when I left the GP training.
Wow.
So I'm not working as a GP. I'm not really working as a integrative doctor or anything like that. In fact, I'm more focused on the spiritual, on the yoga, on workshops that help bring together the physical and the spiritual, and writing, because I feel like these are the modalities that come naturally to me, and I can have, a broader impact. So yeah, there were many detours along the way, but I feel like
what an amazing foundation to have. I mean, like you specialized in psychiatry and like interned.
I did 3 years of the training, and it was very disheartening. I went into it thinking, I'm going to become a psychiatrist and do all these things for mental health, but the extremes of mental health are very extreme, and there wasn't really the place for this kind of holistic approach there.
Wow.
So I left that training. I didn't specialize in the end in any of it because none of it really resonated.
So you had your medical degree, and then you had to go specialize, and you
Yes, yeah. Wow. So that was the journey. And I guess with medicine, it's always like you need to specialize to have something. So it was this like 20-year journey of trying to find the thing. Yeah. But in fact, I found that there was no thing in that path for me.
But it helped you. That helped you find this.
Yeah.
So
it helped me. Like so much of my first book, Body Wisdom, was fueled through witnessing patient after patient only focusing on the physical, complaining of all these things and thinking that that was so disconnected from their mental state, their relationships, their job satisfaction, you know, and that was all the fuel for seeing that no wonder people are so sick, people are so unhappy and not wanting to look at it. So yeah, that kind of, with my own personal journey, cultivated this belief in that the physical is only playing out what's happening on a mental, emotional, spiritual level.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you know what? Doctors know this. This is not some kind of like, 20th century, fact. I mean, this goes way back. So it's like we lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then people like you and I and the doctors from, my community in the TMS world and the PPDA world, and, obviously the people that are more in the alternative integrative world, functional medicine, are but the doctors that are sitting in the office, with the stethoscope, they're really still, heal thyself, and they live by that. But the pharmaceutical industry took them away. It's like it's hard not get wiped up, and you got swiped up in it, and you were like, this is why I'm feeling lost. Like you were pulled between two worlds, and you made a decision before, like right before when you graduated. So something inside of you, your body and mind and soul, drew you to want to go this route. So tell us more about, so you figured out you were not in the right place. And then that must have been very stressful for you.
Oh, very stressful, because from as I said, from medical school, I remember the pressure of that was so great, and the expectations. But once you start something, it's like this treadmill that you just can't, to get off it seems so, if I just push through, the society mentality, if I just push through. But it was 20 years of pushing through, like thinking, is this intuition? Is this fear? Trying to work out which one's which. Am I meant to be a doctor? Oh, it's very confusing.
So tell us, so now it comes down to how this pressure played out in your physiological body, and how your organs and how your brain didn't need to protect you, because the brain sensing a lion is coming, and all it is Talia going to class and feeling depressed.
It was more anxiety. I think in my 20s, going through medical school, then the intern year, and in psychiatry, the stress, like I remember being 1 year out of medical school, so just having done my intern year, and then I was a psychiatry registrar. So then I was managing an inpatient ward of 17 patients, and it was me making the decisions. And these were like psychotic, very depressed, suicidal, everything, locked wards. And the intensity of that stress obviously started to play out. And mainly for me, it's been in the gut and in the mind, with repetitive thoughts and gut symptoms. And so that kind of professional, my professional life, in combination with the relationship I was in at the time, which was also very stressful, led to, all of this being stored in my body, as you said.
Yeah. So what kind of symptoms, like what appeared first? Like just stomach aches, IBS, like what was going on? And then you were like thinking for a minute that you were broken and needed to be fixed? Or did you think automatically like pressure, my gut? Like what?
What? Like, this is why it was so frustrating, because in my inner self, in my intuition, I knew, and I would say to whoever professional I was having contact with, I would say, this is my autonomic nervous system in shutdown, because I wouldn't go to the toilet, and I knew what was happening in my body. But then people would say the classic things like, you need more fiber, or you need this, or you need that, or you need more magnesium. And I'm like, these things are not going to touch the side. Like, my whole system is stressed.
Wow.
So I knew, but I went on this 10-year journey of still thinking, no, there's something that I'm missing, even if it was emotional, even if it's some trauma or something. meanwhile, it just became that fear symptom cycle that was really at play, because even when those traumatic things were gone from my life, that cycle began to be the traumatic thing, if you like.
Yeah, sure.
If that makes sense.
No, actually, so what did you do besides writing a book, which is like your journal? You journaled. What kind of things did you decide to do to heal thyself?
So this was the 10. So obviously, and this has given me so much fuel, as even though I'm not doing much one-on-one work now, like I still inside feel I'm still a healer, whether that comes out through writing, workshops, yoga. That has given me so much knowledge on all of that. So, obviously I started with the medical, where everyone starts, and I started seeing gastroenterologists, and then obviously there was nothing, went to integrative doctors. And this is no disrespect to any of the professionals I mentioned, because there's a place for every healing professional. But for me, then it was the integrative path. And I found that was really an extension of the medical. It was a lot more testing, but it was still just the physical. And, the complete microbiome mapping, looking at, is there a parasite? Is there bacteria? Is there yeast? There was still nothing.
Wow.
All along, there was always nothing. So there was nothing medical. There was nothing from the integrative side or the naturopathic side. Yeah. Nothing could ever be found. And so then I went down acupuncture and body talk and Reiki and, you name it, I've done it. And sometimes things would stick for a little while. Like at one point I did hypnotherapy, and for 5 months, my bowels were working really regularly, and I was going really well. And then I had a stress, and everything kind of flared up again. And I think it's because what happened with that hypnotherapy was I felt safe. I was like, okay, if I just do this meditation every night, I will go tomorrow. So it wasn't the hypnotherapy session. It was the belief and the safety it created in me that then allowed my bowels to go.
Very, very important differentiation.
Yeah.
Because your brain still perceived a threat, but you overrode it with this like constant affirmations, but yet deep down inside,
it wasn't resolved.
Wow.
Because there was 2 parts to that are really important for people to think about. The first part is, if we attach our left brains, the linear, how we all are, A plus B equals C. So for me, it was listen to meditation before I go to bed. In the morning, we'll have a bowel motion. If it's not, it doesn't work like that, right? It's not A plus B equal. It doesn't. Do you know what I'm trying to say? If we attach that as I need to have a morning routine to go to the toilet, because that's still sending a message that there's something wrong with my body. And if my partner interrupts the meditation, he better not, because that will be, catastrophe. If I don't do my morning routine, it's still fear, because underneath that, if I don't do that meditation, or if I don't have
more pressure, expectations.
And so the moment a big life stress came along, again, everything went out the window. So this is no disrespect to hypnotherapy, because there's a time and place for any of these modalities. But it's just that with this stuff, I've learned that I think I'm being called to realize that there's no one fix. That's the whole problem, trying to fix it, because there's not actually anything wrong in my physical, which I know in my heart and soul.
Yeah.
But the fear makes you start seeking and looking.
Right. And then that's the message. That's the message that the brain is hearing is, I need this to fix this. I need this to do that. And the brain's like, okay, I'm here to protect you, but yeah, maybe it'll work because you've just convinced your unconscious mind and it's believing you because you said the words, but down deep inside, you really are not believing, and it becomes it's another cycle, of the, so you mentioned the ruminating thoughts. Like you were like, I got this. I went to the hypnotherapist. I'm going to figure this out. This is going to be fun. I'm going to be fine. Like, it's this and your body senses where you're convincing yourself. You're not trusting. You're not believing. You're not letting go in order to have control, which is another paradox. You know, Dr. David Hanscom, one of the doctors that we all work with and talk to and study from, he even, I think he even coined this word. If Susie's in the Susie Keynes, if you remember this, if you're listening from the UK, she sometimes chimes in, but it's fascinating because we'll get back to the thoughts, back to the Byron Katie work, back to understanding how powerful the thoughts are. But he coined this word, ruminating thoughts, because if we can be an observer, a witnesser, a recognizer, an acceptor of our thoughts without judgment, without reaction, without criticism, that's a place to know yourself. And that opens up the door to what you shared with me when we were prepping this week about how knowing yourself for you, that's your, like, I think it's one of the most amazing things that people need. But for you, it was like you kept saying, this is what people need. They need to know themselves. So can you address that regarding your...
So I guess that's like, you know, what I've really found is, especially in this modern world, it's funny because in the last week since we connected, I've been speaking to a lot of parents and how much difficulty they're having managing children that are so exposed to social media and outside world pressures and the whole internet. And I guess it highlights just how hard it is for all of us, children, adults, everyone, to not be pulled out of ourselves when making decisions, not be influenced by this person's perspective, this, even in the healing world, like this is going to work, you need to do this, you need to heal your inner child. It just gets also confusing for people. There's just so many roots. It's your nervous system, it's your adrenals, it's very overwhelming. And so my whole philosophy is based on trying to connect people with themselves, with their own intuition, and to hear what others say, to always have an open mind, but with discernment. Does it resonate for me or does it not?
Yeah.
Because that is something that I found really hard to
or can I interrupt and say, and to go into a method or to work with a therapist and be like, everything will be okay. I will get what I need. I may not heal completely. I don't use the word cure. I'm on my journey. I need to learn something from this person. If it doesn't feel like a connection, I'm not lost. I didn't waste my time or my money. You know, it took you 10 years to figure out that you were lost. I mean, it's like, this is, I want people to I would like people to see that nothing is for naught, nothing is a waste, that if they know themselves, like, we have to fall 8 times and get up 9. It's just the way it is. We're
Can
not.
I say something on that?
Yeah, thank you for that.
I really feel, and I write about this a lot, that even when we detour, okay, even when we make decisions backwards and forth, like I did with medicine and all of the stuff, obviously as a soul, I had lessons to learn on that journey. I learned so much.
That's it.
And even with the symptoms I have experienced, as I say, mainly in the mind and the gut, at different times, like the lessons I've learned from the gut. So in the early days, like you were asking me about, the lessons that the gut was showing me was, you know, get out of medicine and get out of that relationship, right? So it took time. That's what it was trying to communicate with me. And then the lessons became other lessons. And then the people I met along the way were often, you know, there was a soul connection. There was something that needed to play out, or there was some kind of message I needed to get from them and they needed to get from me. So just to see the bigger picture, that the story, the journey of our lives happens for a reason. So my mentor, who was my mentor for my book, Iggy Tan, he says, you need to trust the river of your life. You need to trust the river of where you're being taken and realize that you don't know where things are going to unfold. You don't know how.
You have oars, you can direct it.
trusting the river isn't about just like giving up. It's about surrendering to the flow of where your life is taking you versus paddling upstream. Because if you're pushing against,
does Ikitan believe that you're creating you're creating the river that you're on, and there's also this like you're creating. What I think we can agree on is that you're creating your experience of the river. That's what you're 100% responsible. If you find yourself from a family or with the situation, like your experience of it is where you can win and where you can make decisions and be responsible. That's kind of what I
think it's kind of like you're putting two concepts together. This concept is very simple. It's about, say there's a river going downstream and you have one of two choices. You go with it and flow with a little more ease, or you go against and push.
Got it.
So when we resist life, when we resist our life, when we fight the symptoms, which we all do because it's so stressful and so despairing at times, and we suffer because we're fighting. When we flow with that river and go, yep, this is playing out right now. I don't like it. I hope that there's a better future. I believe there's a better future, but I accept where I am right now. We can flow and we can go.
It's the only way.
And maybe, and seeing the bigger picture, maybe there's something that will come later in my life, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, that there will have been a reason why I went through that. And we don't know that yet. And there may be and there may not be. But at least that flowing with the river is better than resisting the current and having that suffering.
It's like finding some meaning and purpose in what happened, and that you're never a victim of it. It was created, you were part of it. And I just think to that story that we can take our oars and, the river's life. We're not escaping life. And at the end of the river is death. But in between, we can decide, which oar, how fast, how slow. And like you said, if we find ourselves oaring, traveling somewhere and we didn't want to be, to just accept it. And I love that. That's the 12-step philosophy. It's like, you're not going to be able to change things until you accept them. That's kind of what you're saying. And who was Ikitan?
So again, like you're saying with synchronicity, we met through a meditation. I went to a meditation group, and then connected on Facebook, and he had written a book. So
what's his book called?
I'm having a mental blank. I knew you were going to ask me, and straight away.
Fine, don't worry. And he's in Australia?
Yeah, he's in Australia.
He sounds familiar. No, but he's okay. It sounds familiar. Anyway,
craving happiness. I'm pretty sure it's craving happiness. He'll be very upset with me that I don't.
No, it's a wonderful title, but it was funny. Going back to knowing yourself. I think, and you mentioned, and I put up one of your chapters of your book because you mentioned the word ego, and we can find a struggle with ourself and resistance. And blocks and locks and stops, like what you had in your colon. If we're fighting a part of ourselves, and yet, like I say to people, can you love even the part of you that you hate? If you don't like a part of you, it's okay. You have a right to have an opinion, but to be able to accept that part of you, and that part of you, that behavior came for a reason. You had to survive. Or how many people succeed in so many ways, Talia, in their life, and then they get chronic pain or a disease and they can't get past it because their ego is like, wait a minute, I got this. And this is not the same way that they deal with their work or their partner. This is an internal.
This is really an interesting point that you're raising, because I think like a lot of the stuff is sometimes you see in this realm, they list like personality traits that are more vulnerable to like perceived danger, symptoms, like that. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So there's that perfectionistic, driven, sensitive type. And I think a lot of also high achievers would find this really difficult because no longer is there a linear approach, you know, to
And
getting.
they're the ones that they're like you and I, and we get these conditions.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because
Okay.
that's the type, because and maybe that's the bigger picture, because the whole lesson is to learn to stop trying to fix.
Right.
You know,
right.
that you know, there's something in that as well. Like, yeah.
Right. This goes out to all the. I have a client who I always call him a sensitive man, and he doesn't like it. I'm like, sensitive is the new strong, and you don't realize how strong you are and how you've been in your life and you've accomplished everything and you're like this level, and you know, but he really feels sensitive means weak. And this is another whole idea about, you know, the culture and knowing ourselves. And I used to go to therapy in my teens, asking therapists to make me less sensitive. So can you teach me how to be less sensitive? I really thought I could learn to, you know, to wipe away that character trait, which like covered my body and mind. It's all with, I was tattooed sensitivity. You know, it's like I'm the most sensitive person in the world, you know, there's nobody else like me. So I understood that myself. And then I meet people and it's, so we have to really know and develop your own label. So he maybe, you know, maybe sensitive is uncomfortable for him, but that he's obviously on a path to, that he has to look inside. It's not comfortable. But I want to ask anyone out there who's listening to please chime in with any kind of questions for Dr. Talia. I would love to ask you more about your book. And, you know, when I saw that it was called The Body's Wisdom, I thought of Louise Hay. And I know my daughters and I, whenever something's wrong, we look up, you know, what it means, which is kind of fascinating how Louise Hay found all these conditions and what they meant. I don't know where she learned that from, some Eastern, you know, shaman. I don't know, where do you find out like what each symptom means, which is just sort of our ego wants to know, well, this means that. But tell us more about the body's wisdom. I'd love to hear about that and how people can, because the solution is in the body and the problem is in the body. So the body's wisdom knew the solution before the problem. But tell us more about your.
So it's body wisdom. So it's body wisdom. I've got it here. What is your body trying to tell you? And it really is like in my in the areas I've worked, there's still a lot of resistance to what we've said. Like, I think you might know a lot more people that are more open to this, but, you know, working in Perth, working in the medical community, that was, you know, there's a lot of resistance, right? So my book is about that, you know, every physical symptom we experience, as I said, I think before, there's something on a mental, emotional, or spiritual level that is trying to express itself. And because of our human mind, because of our ego, we might not want to look at certain aspects unless it shows up in the body, because the body is how our soul gets our attention, right? Because if there's a symptom in our body, if there's an illness, we're paying attention. So you might have someone who's, I don't know, a workaholic or something like that, and they just keep going on that treadmill. They would never change, right? But when something shows up in their body, and hopefully that something is just a small thing, but if we don't listen, you know, and it builds up, it can be a bigger thing, then that symptom is actually there as a flag to get them to look within, to look at the ways in which they're living that actually aren't serving their soul. So my book kind of goes through, my first book, I've written my second book, it's not yet published, but yeah, that's interesting too. But this book goes into the intricacies of my journey and what happens when you don't listen to your body and how that plays out. And then that's kind of the first bit. And then how to start listening, how to start connecting. So yeah, that's the premise of this book.
Yeah. Wow. So, you know, The Body Keeps the Score. We all know that book by Dr. Vandelkock, I think that's his name, who talks about trauma. It doesn't always have to be trauma. It doesn't have to be. It does sometimes set people's immune systems to be vulnerable if there's some big trauma. But the body, I love the way that you express that. And especially if we align it with that, the body's not punishing you, it's protecting you. Symptom is not there because your body's against you. And I often say that you can't heal a body you hate. And that the people that I've
hard. That's really hard. Like when you are in pain and you feel like you fighting the body, like at war with your stomach or wherever it's playing out for you, and then to have the realization that this isn't my body. There's nothing wrong happening in my physical body in the case of these kind of symptoms that we're talking about tonight. This is something at play in my mind or my heart that's just not happy, that's just struggling. If we can shift our attention to the emotions that need to come up, or to the thought processes, or to what's not working in our life, to the deeper things, then the body will calm down. It always does.
So rather than go from, I hate my body, okay, I love my body, there's something in between. And you're saying to understand. Go ahead, say it again. So someone has raging symptoms and they know.
Say in the midst of a flare-up, okay, and you're in abdominal pain. So in those moments, which I've been so many times, it's human nature to be scared, to be like, I hate this pain. Like, what is my stomach doing to me? Like this, why is it getting in the way of me living my life? And this is normal thinking.
Right.
But then we need to come in and learn, actually, this isn't getting in the way of me living my life. It's trying to show me that there's something in how I'm living my life that's not in alignment with my soul. Something is out of balance. So anytime something shows up in the body, when we can stop and see, okay, all right, flag, like something isn't quite right, that's when we can start to really heal. And heal, as you said, it doesn't mean cure. It might mean just slightly less pain or less flare-ups, or but it's okay. What actually needs my attention?
Right. So it's a message. And yeah, we're not about repressing your feelings, but we can feel angry and sad and shame and fearful and not have symptoms. It's how you express them, and it's the acceptance of yourself. It's like, your triggers, what triggers, this worries you, this saddens you. So, be in touch with it, be aware of it. Don't judge yourself. Don't criticize yourself. Let it flow. Like, yeah, I'm feeling really shitty. Yeah, I'm feeling really sad. Doesn't mean I have to go cry, a box of Kleenex, but I need to understand that if I don't flow with it or allow it to happen or process it in a way that's healthy. There was something I put up on a page about if we hold back our anger and we don't express our anger in a healthy way, it'll hurt our brain. And I was like, yeah, it's the way we're expressing it. We're beating ourselves up. We're punishing ourselves. We're bullying ourselves. And that's causing the brain to live in fight and flight, which is the whole cycle of how you had constipation, because your brain was thinking you've got to be ready to fight some lion.
And I think what we can gently shift our conversation to is a big part that I think is where I'm currently at. So I still am very much experiencing the things I've spoken about, and I'm still in that part of my journey where I now know what's at play, but I'm now trying to teach my brain that everything is actually okay. So I'll just explain a bit about that part. So we can have traumatic situations or events that trigger the symptom, in this world of mind body. So say you've ruled out everything else and you've come to, it's something that's in my mind that's triggering these symptoms in the body, right? then the symptom may have come about through, the stressful job, the stressful relationship that caused it in the first place. But then what I have found the hardest part is that creates the symptom, but then you become fearful of the symptoms. Then that fear is just so directed at, oh no, oh my God, this is going to play out again. Am I going to go to the toilet in the morning? Am I bloated again? All that fear around the symptoms then creates more symptoms, which creates more fear, which creates more symptoms, which creates more fear. And so I have found that still in myself, I am often trapped in this cycle.
Right.
So I think we really need to recognize that once you realize that it really is a mind-body symptom, there may have been initially some inner work you had to do to resolve a trauma or, leave a job or leave a relationship or all of that. But sometimes some people like myself can then be faced with just that cycle, that your inner fears are now being channeled towards the symptom. And that is what is keeping you stuck.
Wow. Okay,
So all of those.
So you figured that out. Now share more for our listeners. So you are literally understanding being in your own threat, safety, fear symptom. So you understand I've got to keep teaching my brain. I'm on this journey. I'm having patience. It will happen. It's okay. Tomorrow's another day. I'll do some yoga. Like I can go ahead. Even if I took something, I'm not against people smoking a joint or a cigarette to relax their anxiety or take an Advil to relax their pain. I'm all for that. Just keep going to the cause and the place where the healing will happen. So what other things do you do for yourself besides the learning the new language? What other things do you do to help trust the process?
So I think for many years, the main things, like I'm a yoga teacher as well. So yoga was the initial part of, trying to cultivate a little more space and stillness. And then obviously meditation came in. I think these things are amazing. And obviously meditation is rarely a bad thing unless you're in a panic attack. Or have a trauma where it's too stressful. For most people, meditating in some way is great. What I found though is, for me personally, and I'm not sure, maybe other people can say if they relate, I'm actually pretty great at getting into a deep meditative state. And if I could stay there all the time, that would be wonderful. But like the moment I come out of it, or the moment I open my eyes in the morning, the mind starts on these ruminating thoughts.
Wow.
So where I'm at now is trying to integrate everything I've learned into minute by minute, like a million times a day, whenever repetitive thoughts come up or whenever I'm starting to get into fear about symptoms in the body, every time, which is quite a big task, trying to go, okay, thank you, mind, I'm okay. So I'm trying to bring that into my actual everyday living.
I call that mindful moments and like a mindfulness routine, a mindfulness behavior. It's almost like you're meditating throughout the day because you're witnessing, you're aware, you're responding, you're calling in your sympathetic nervous system to bring in the calming, oxytocin, and you're being loving and gentle, which is all this visualization and calming. So I see it as you're creating this mindfulness behavior, and that's the character trait. That's like we all have that in us because we all take care of babies or little puppies, or we're all loving to everyone else. So I know we all have that ability because smart and sensitive people get these conditions. So go ahead. So you've developed this mindful sense, and not always can you be that way, but then you bring that in, you call in the angels.
Only just starting to. So as I said, like it was 10 years on all these other things, and only in the last 6 months have I really found, different sources like Dan Buglio and things out there
Yeah.
Like I listen to Dan's videos all the time, nearly every day, because, you know, and he talks about like talking to yourself how you would a child and saying, it's okay, Talia, like that's just how it's playing out today. You'll be all right. And it's hard. Like the truth of it is it's very hard to rewire a brain. But, you know, the thing is not to lose hope, because we often as humans don't see how far we've come, like how much growth we've done, and like all the things we've shifted.
Well, we've learned pain, so we have to unlearn it. And how long did we learn it? And maybe it's lifetimes, and enormous patience and hope and belief.
Yeah.
And as we spoke about, you know, that we're goal-oriented people, so we want results. We can see in the journey and in the process and on the path, there are little pieces of pixie dust of results. And that we know why the symptom is there. We know why the pain is there. Like, we don't have to search. We're not a victim of our body. We know exactly how the body speaks. And, you know, everyone has their own way of, there's two things, and you may have heard of this, but we become less sensitive to the symptom. We become like, it doesn't matter. Okay, come. That's okay. We can be together. It's okay. We can figure this out together. You know, we can work this out. We can get it. We can find a solution right now today, and then figure like we can, you know, so it's acceptance. It's learning this language. It's understanding the unconscious mind is throwing out thousands and thousands of thoughts a day.
And so that's something to talk on as well, if I can. Sorry.
Please interrupt.
Yeah, I think what we also have to appreciate is the human psyche is, as we know, is complex. And like anything in life, so why do people stay in jobs that aren't working for them? Why do people stay in relationships that aren't working? Why do people do anything, you know, drink too much, or that there's something at play, that the symptom or the bad habit or the bad job or the bad relationship, there's something that is serving us. And I think when we can actually develop enough inner awareness to realize, perhaps I'm not yet ready to be free of the symptom. Perhaps on some level I am holding my own self back because I'm not quite sure what comes next. I mean, this is actually gives us it's like gold. It's like to go, oh, okay. So, and I'm getting tingles as I say that. So, yeah, I think there's something to that, to realizing that, not to judge ourselves, but to realize that secondary gains has negative connotations, but that there might be other reasons at play why we are holding ourselves back, why we are attached to the symptoms.
Well, that's a level of work that is, I call naked, you know, with your clothes on, and, you know, what is the symptom doing for me? What is my complaining? How is it serving me? What is my feelings? You know, like, so, and one of the books that Rose turned me on to was called Reaching into the Resistance, written by one of the doctors she studies with, an ICDP doctor, Dr. Alan Abbas. And, you know, reaching into the resistance is freedom. You know, what Viktor Frankl said, you know, in the concentration camps, you know, between a thought and an action, there's a moment, and in that moment is freedom. And sometimes we choose that we're not ready to be free yet. We're in a cage, the door's open, we have the key, and we're not leaving the cage.
And that's okay. And to realize that all of our like life lessons is to learn that self-compassion, and to realize, okay, that almost takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I'm not yet ready. Well, that makes a bit more sense. That almost dials down the fear very quickly.
Yeah, very good. Like acceptance. Like, this is where I'm at. I'm in transition. You know, there's something very stable about transition. It's called, I know where I'm at. Otherwise, transition could be very negative, but that's a thought. And we're back to the judgment and to the thought and to the labels that doctors give us that can kill us, or it can be okay, you know. And so I think with all the shows that I've been through, and, you know, coming on 4 years of the round table in Hebrew and English, the people that are on their healing journey and in recovery have made a decision, you know, to look at what's serving them, what is the symptom serving them. And if they really, really want to get better, like, I really, really want to get better, can appear pressure to the brain. Not that you really don't, like, I really, really want to learn Hebrew, you know, like I really, really, really. So it's like, we have to be aware of what happens when our brain, like, because the brain doesn't differentiate in the amygdala between a negative stress or a positive stress, which is interesting. I learned this long ago. And then recently, the brain does not differentiate between a psychological stress or a physical stress. So that's why people have on the record extinction bursts, which is a term in my field about pain, where we'll feel better. We'll actually have a reduction of symptoms or a lesser intensity of symptoms, or we're sleeping better. And then we get all excited and like, I'm healing, it's working. I'm getting what I need from my therapist, you know, I paid good money and now I got a reduction of symptoms. The brain will interpret that as excitement and as stress. And you're like, okay, brain, come on, cut me a break.
Yeah.
But we can teach our brain to be less sensitive. We're in control of our brain. We're the navigator. This is what I'm learning now in quantum physics. Like, we are the conductor. So what's your take on that? Like, how much control we really have? And it's hard to be responsible and in control. And, you know, like, what's your take on that? Because it's about the seesaw. Like, we have to be more balanced. I let go, I have control. I let go, I have control.
I think the more, like, in terms of energy, like through yoga and stuff, you think of the intention behind something and the energy. If someone is really, really, really desperate for a partner and they have that clingy energy, or desperate to have a baby, or desperate for the symptoms to heal, or desperate for the business to take off, it will never happen until they let that go. So I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's try, not try. And honestly, I find, like many of us out there, that's really, really hard.
I know, like, what about that? Come on.
Because it's like, oh, but I'm working so hard and it's not happening.
What about that? What about that?
So it comes back to that surrender and to try, but to bring in that energy of ease, back to trusting the river and the flow and the gentleness, realizing that we cannot force life. We cannot force what we think we want to unfold. So about controlling life, what do I think about that? I actually don't think we can control our lives. I think at some point we have to realize, like, we can certainly get certain things we want in our lives. But I think, and I write about this maybe in my second book, a more helpful question is, what does life want from me? Not what do I want from life? What does life want from me? What am I being called to do? Not in my whole life, but at this moment in time. What's flowing? What's naturally just unfolding? What doesn't feel like hard work? So I think I feel maybe a little bit differently, that the amount of control we can have is probably quite small, but we can, you know, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
I don't want to use the word control. I think how I want to frame it, I think we're saying the same thing, is that it's not like whatever happens, happens and I'll accept. I mean, we are having an experience of what happens, and we are in the driver's seat of what happens. And our relationship with what happens is completely in our control. And for many things, we can control what happens. But if we believe that our experience of everything is our experience, my glasses, then nothing can take me down. Especially if I'm in touch with if I know myself and I know I'm, like people who are not soul searchers and not deep sensitive people will not get TMS and probably will not get certain conditions. I mean, that's another topic, but I think it's to know yourself, to know that we are in control of our thoughts. I like to use that word. We are completely in control of our thoughts because we put them in our unconscious mind, or you can disagree in a minute, or they come from predictive coding or what we learned, but we are completely in control of our response to them, our relationship. And from that place, you can change.
So I had a really beautiful friend that said to me once, so that concept that we're in control of our thoughts can be dangerous, because what it creates is fear. So if you have a really bad thought or really negative thought, and you really believe that every thought is going to play out in your reality, that can create a fear of, oh my gosh, like I thought that terrible thing and now it's going to play out. Do you see how that can also be damaging for people who are really sensitive to what other people say? So this idea of every thought is going to manifest into physical reality. And the other side of that I wanted to mention is, so say with OCD, you can have very, very distressing negative thoughts pop into the brain. The secondary thinking, and this is what my beautiful friend was talking to me about, the secondary thinking is in your control, even if it doesn't feel like it. An initial thought that comes from nowhere that can be very, very distressing to someone is not necessarily in their control. That first boom thought comes into the brain, weird, random, distressing. It's what that person then does with it that needs to be wired. Well, how do I manage once I've had such a distressing thought? How do I manage that? Do I repeat?
Don't trust it. Don't trust it. Question it. Put it in your journal. Observe it. Recognize it. Don't attach to it. Like that's mindfulness. That's meditation.
Definitely.
Put them on the shelf. Put them in a pocket.
Definitely. But with things like OCD, that I think the distinction does need to be made, that the person has not put that initial thought in their head. Because if you look up all the different types, they can be very distressing, harm to other people.
How about this? Okay, how about Talia? Because you did study psychiatry and you did study the mind, nervous system in a different way than I did in school. But can we say that we always know where our thoughts come from? How negative, like it could be like, well, that's a weird thought, but it probably came from some predictive coding, which is this, neural pathway. It could be from a past life. We just have to be responsible. That came into my brain from whatever it came from. I'm going to let it go. Like, can we agree on that?
Yeah, I think we can agree on that. And what I've kind of come to is, and many people might not agree with what I'm going to say, but it just, for some reason, I connect with this idea that there's almost like, if we're all connected, if on some level all humans are connected, there is this like collective consciousness of thought. So even if you think about what's happening at the moment, like just the other day I was talking to a mum of a teen girl, and she said with all the gender, stuff coming out at the moment, they're all questioning their gender identity. And that's because there's this idea, there's always been this idea of contagion. Like once one person is thinking it, there might be a few that are genuine and then a few that are just, it's the contagion effect. So how I like to think of it is there's like a collective consciousness of thought. And there might be someone out there who's thinking, they're going to murder someone, right?
God forbid,
If that thought pops into into our heads, I think to realize that we haven't put it there, that popped into our heads, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to understand, to reduce the self-stigma or
100%
for those kind of things.
That's amazing. And it's really, that goes into the quantum physics And again, you're in control of responding to that. Like that's where we can, and that word control is very, so that was well done. And we can always agree to disagree. I think
that's what makes it interesting, because
the
truth, like, and I think this is really important for all of us. I mean, this is a big point as well, to be less attached to our own beliefs, to realize that just as strongly as you hold yours, I hold mine. Therefore, there's no exact truth. They're just beliefs, and we have to all hold them a little lighter.
Beautiful. And beautiful. So that's amazing. And there's like a dozen topics I'd love to talk to you about, each one we mentioned. And there's a handful of people in the studio, but people are shy today because it's early morning in America and middle of the day in Britain and middle of the day in Israel. It's nighttime in Australia, and I really would love to, attract more Australians and maybe have you come back and we can meet again and talk about some of these amazing things, hear about your second book. I know, Talia, you have a Facebook page. Yeah. I think a professional. Do you have a professional Facebook page, or was it just your personal?
Professional, yeah. It's okay. Dr. Talia Steed.
Right. And then you are teaching in Australia, and people can contact you locally in Perth. I posted your book on my site, The Body's Wisdom, which looks phenomenal. And if anybody has any questions, like this will be on YouTube tonight or tomorrow, and many people view it there. And anyone can, what happens is questions come in. I see the questions on the YouTube. I'm going to refer them to you. And also, you can even go onto my, you can just leave on the feed after this show. You can leave on the feed your email and your website. You can write down on the feed under the video, the live video. People can contact you. I mean, we are a small tribe of sisterhood and brotherhood of healers and healing. I always say healing ourselves as we're healing others. And so anyone out there want to say something in the feed before I say goodbye and shalom to Dr. Talia Steed? So maybe what I did with my Israeli co-host many times, we would always leave the show and leave something where, what would you like to leave with the audience? What would you like to leave at the end of this recording, at the end of this live show, which will be on the recording, is what do you want to leave with people? What can they take home? What can they take home today?
To trust themselves, to trust their inner feeling, to never let anyone, even someone they respect, like a surgeon or a doctor or their naturopath, their energy healer, to never put their soul into someone else's hands. That ultimately it's all just information, and if it fits, great. And if something doesn't feel right, even a medical professional saying so, or any one of the other modalities we've mentioned, that you are in the driver's seat. That is where you are in control to say, no, that supplement isn't what I need. I can't take that 3 times a day. I can't go for that surgery. That is where your power lies.
Wow, that's beautiful. So Cheryl is living in Queensland, I think in Queensland, and Cheryl was helped by Rose and myself, and she had every itis under the sun. And for a while, she was a stewardess, which was very stressful. And she developed a lot of conditions and healed herself through this work. And she's very profound and always leaves deep statements. So observing without attachment takes practice, but in time, you will connect to the deeper self and observe the thoughts coming and going. That's the flow. That's the river. Thank you, Cheryl, for posting. And so we will meet again.
Yes.
Remember this face. We will meet again. And I'm so happy I found you. I have to thank Dr. Tyron Walters. He's a chiropractor here in Israel from South Africa who somehow found you.
Oh no, that name.
Did Tyrone contact you?
I think there's a family connection between our mothers.
Maybe he's lovely. In fact, he really contacted me. I bumped into him at the airport a few months ago, which I haven't been to the airport in years, and I was going to America, and he was there. He's like, I need this work. I love chiropractic. I'm helping a lot of people, but a lot of them, they need the body mind. I'm like, call me, you know. And then he sent me this article.
Wow.
That you wrote about fear, I think, and
yeah.
And I saw the connection, and
I
contacted you, and you responded, and so. Mission accomplished. You're here, and we will absolutely meet again. I'm grateful for your time and your patience. Thank you for allowing me to interrupt a few times.
Thank you.
And so God bless and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, you too.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, wait 1 second.